Welcome to the world of Juniper Mountain Coffee, where they believe in the power of direct trade. They work with over 200 multi-generational farmers, cutting out the middleman to bring you the freshest coffee at an affordable price. Their 15 years of experience in roasting coffee, the best coffee on the planet, has resulted in a Q-grade score of 87. This makes them a leader in high-end specialty coffee. Now, to put that in perspective, your green brand, the Hillary coffees of the world, is about a 60. This is way above that. They also prioritize sustainable coffee farming practices, focusing on conservation to ensure the future of fine coffee drinking. Juniper Mountain is a family-owned business just like mine, steeped in Western hunting tradition and fair chase ethics, so you can feel good about every single sip. Try Juniper Mountain Coffee just like we drink here at Eastmans. Hey folks, I'm Mike Eastman, your host. I wanted to share with you my recent experience with Sawyer products. They offer a great selection of products that are must-have if you're on an outdoor adventure. Their range includes water filtration systems, insect repellent, sunscreen, and even first aid kits, so you can be prepared for any situation in the backcountry. I highly recommend their dependable and top-notch lightweight products for your next outdoor adventure. The water filters work in any situation. They even have one that is good for 400,000 gallons of water. And if you buy a water filter, you're helping to save lives all over the world. They donate millions of filters to communities that don't have clean, drinkable water. I also love their sunscreen. It lasts all day, is not greasy, and is virtually scent-free. Their bug spray repels ticks and other biting bugs. You put it on your clothes or your pets, and it's good for 6 washings. It even works on my horses. So before your next adventure, check them out at Sawyer.com and let me know you heard it. So before your next adventure, check them out at Sawyer.com and let them know you heard it here, and thank them for supporting Eastmans. All right. Well, Michael Easter, thank you for joining us here today. We're going to talk not only about who you are and some of the stuff that you have found that my audience hunters would really appreciate to know, but also you're a new hunter and you went on a epic adventure in Alaska with Donnie Vincent. And I want to know about that and taking it from the new hunter's perspective, you know, what you learned and what you wish you'd have done different. And, you know, if you're ever going to do it again, I mean, that's a pretty tough one to bite off your first hunt. I mean, most people are like, oh, I went bird hunting or I shot a whitetail one time. No, let's go to Alaska on a backpack caribou hunt. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It was pretty wild. I mean, I guess to just answer the big question right away, am I going to keep hunting after that? And yeah, the answer is yes. So after the book has come out, I've gone on a couple hunts. I don't have anything this fall because I have another book coming out, which is unfortunately killed all my time. But yeah, I've continued to attempt to hunt. I'm still absolutely in the learning phase. So trying to latch on to people who are smarter than me about the whole deal. But I found it really rewarding. And I like that, you know, there's a challenge in a lot of different ways. It's not like, you know, it's someone the other day was asking me, how do you get into hunting? It seems like there's a lot of steps. I'm like, yeah, it's not like golf where you just go, you know, you buy the clubs and then you call the clubhouse and go, hey, I'm going to be there at like 9 a.m. Is that okay? And they go, well, we got 4 other people at 9, but how about 9:10?
Yeah.
You're like, okay. No, it's like you put your name in, you wait, you have to learn all these other skills. You have to think about gear. You have to think about food. You have to think about, there's so many inputs. But I also think that's what makes it so interesting and so rewarding.
Yeah, it's a survival. I always call it a survival exercise, and the reason you put yourself through those steps is so that you can become a better hunter and procure meat. But the whole thing is all about survival back there. I don't care if you're doing it from a pickup or if you're doing a backpack or, you know, I do a lot of horseback stuff. The whole thing's survival and forethought and disconnect, which we'll get into in a minute because I know that's a big thing for your new book coming out, right? Is this and all that. So let's talk a little bit about who Michael Easter is. Where did you grow up in Vegas?
No, I actually grew up just north of Salt Lake City in a little town called Bountiful.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, a Utah boy. And you
Yeah.
never, that's a rarity.
No. So I was raised, so single parent home. So my mom was the sole breadwinner. It was just her and I. And yeah, she had to work a lot. She was a sales rep for women's clothes. So she did a lot of traveling. So yeah, there wasn't really anyone around to teach
No
me to
mentors.
hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I'd always kind of been interested in it. And I was in Boy Scouting. So you get a tiny bit of exposure that way. I did grow up fishing, fly fishing. And yeah, so it was kind of a natural, I guess it wasn't totally random that I ended up kind of getting interested in hunting in I think it was my late 20s, and then ended up becoming friends with Donnie. Did a men's health story about him because I worked in magazines for so long. And then that just kind of led into the book.
That's awesome. So you were writing for Men's Health editor, right? As well?
Yeah. I was there for maybe 7 years.
Wow.
From about 2010 to 2017.
Wow. And that brings a lot of writing. And what was there a catalyst that jumped you from, you know what, I'm going to write a book, and not only I'm going to write a book, but what was the catalyst that said, I'm going to do the comfort crisis? And, there's reading through your stuff, it seemed like there was always one thing, a moment at a gym where you watched a guy take a drink of water and exercise for 10 minutes. There's always something. What was the comfort crisis?
So it was a handful of things. So I'll start to answer this a few different ways. A couple things is that, one, at Men's Health, I noticed that, so it's this lifestyle health magazine, right? It's not like health that happens at the doctor's office. It's like, how can I improve my health and my life on my own living? Yeah. Everything that we would write about, you would often have to do something uncomfortable to get the benefit. So it's like, if you want to improve your health, you're probably going to have to exercise. Exercise is uncomfortable. We wrote a lot about weight loss. That involves eating less. You're going to be hungry. Hunger is uncomfortable. So I sort of saw this trend that, on the other side of going through short-term discomfort is often long-term growth. And then I ended up experiencing that in my own life, where I just, when I was younger, I drank too much, and to get sober, well, that sucked. But when I did that, my life improved across the board. So there's another example of this story of I'm leaning into comfort. I have to go through discomfort in order to improve my life. Right. So I have those two observations, the observation at work, the experience in my life. And then I do this story on Donnie Vincent, where I just hung out with him for, I think it was 5 days. He was up in outside of Ely, Nevada, on an elk hunt for a couple weeks. And so I just tailed him for, I think it was 5 days, and wrote about it sort of as a piece into this trend of backcountry hunting. This was maybe 2015, 2016. Might have been later. Might have been, who knows?
Was it successful?
Yeah. So the story, which is, first of all, you need to have the context that hunting and Men's Health, the magazine had been around for 30 years. And I was the guy who got the story in because I was like, no, I don't think you're thinking about this wrongly, to my editors. I'm like, we have movement through nature. We're sourcing lean protein. It's there's all these reasons why this is so healthy. And so let's cover this, And so the story, it did really well. We both got a lot of outreach. It was super popular online. And Donnie and I just stayed in touch. And he was wanting to get me out on something longer. And he called me up one day and, had this proposal that he's going up to the Arctic for a month and would I like to tail? And I was like, yeah, well, let's do it. My first reaction was, I don't know, man, but he talked me into it.
30 days up there. Oh, yeah.
And then
what does that look like after 7?
It looks like you're a little leaner. You're a lot hungrier. You're definitely, you don't even know if you're cold anymore. You're like, is this still cold or is this just my normal state?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I can still feel everything, so I must be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the book came out of that because it's sort of this look into, when you think about how human life has changed, it has changed radically since we were hunters and gatherers, right? We lived as hunter-gatherers for pretty much all of our species time. When you look at humanity, it's like 2.5 million years. And then all of a sudden we get the Industrial Revolution, and now pretty much the things that most impact your daily life, climate control, the food system, our transportation system, the fact that you wake up in a soft bed and have hot running water, all these things.
It's 72 degrees.
Yeah, it's 72 degrees. They're all designed to make your life easier and more comfortable. And so having that thought of, okay, well, I noticed that in our magazine, when people, lean too much into comfort, they get into trouble. And to offset that, they have to do uncomfortable things. Like, I wondered how that had changed us as humans. And so the Arctic was a good lens to look at that through, because doing what we were doing, just walking around across the landscape, trying to survive, hunting, is what humans did every day for all of their lives.
Yeah.
Right. And they didn't have sweet rifles and sweet Kafaru teepees and Gore-Tex and all that kind of stuff.
And an end point. Like, we're done in 30 days. We don't have, we're not prepping. This 30 days isn't prepping for the next, for those bad 120 days in the winter when there's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's kind of what kicked it all off.
That is awesome. That's so amazing. It's funny that your first hunt was an elk hunt, because I get this question a lot. People are like, well, how do I start hunting? And I'm like, I know elk are sexy. I get it. But when you get an 800-pound animal and you get it on the ground, you're going to find out what hell really is all about. And if it's September and it's 80 degrees out, you're going to find out what hell smells like. And so it's awesome that your first one was, you dove into that and went, yeah, I think I could do this for 30 days in Alaska. That sounds fun. Let's do this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it didn't necessarily sound fun. But I think that was the point, right? It's like, my purpose of going up there was not to go on a fun hunt. It was like, let's explore this idea and really experience it.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So Comfort Crisis, you write through that, which I'm admittedly, I haven't read the whole book. It's one of those things that I started reading. I went, oh my gosh, I gotta go back and actually read this thing, because I'm looking at it through my own lens now as a person, going, you're right, I am too comfortable. But let me ask you a couple questions here. I was reading through this going, okay, how did he come up with this idea? Number one. Number two, do you think, I think it's really interesting that you recognized that hunters, this isn't Elmer Fudd, this isn't Billy Joe Bob hunting and we're just out, bloodthirsty. That's not what it's really about. Did you find through this research that hunting is a really good way to reset yourself every year, because you're putting yourself uncomfortable every year on purpose? Oh yeah.
So, I mean, there's a million different ways to answer that question, but I'll give you this one.
Okay.
In the book, I talk about why time in nature is so good for humans, physical health, mental health. There's all this super fascinating research coming out, all different kinds of doses of nature, but the dose that seems to be best for the average person, something we should do every year, is this concept called the 3-day effect. And it basically says that after you've been in nature, deep in nature, like backcountry, for at least 3 days, what happens is that your brain starts writing what are called alpha waves. So these are different than beta waves. Beta waves are the waves that we ride in modern life, that are kind of frenetic, go, associated with stress, with burnout. Alpha waves are the same exact waves found in experienced meditators. So they're associated with feelings of like calm, I feel great, my thoughts are collected. It's this great mental health reset to spend at least 3 days in the wild every year. And hunting gives you that, right? You are in it. And I don't think most people get that unless they're, probably backpackers do and that sort of thing. But backpackers, they don't also get to fill their freezer at the end of the year. So
That's right. Their purpose out there is not as defined as hunting, for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things. It's funny you say 3 days, because every fall, of course, I spend about 10 to 12 weeks every fall hunting. And every fall, the first 3 days, it's almost like I'm going through detox of, I used to think it was detox of screen time, and come to find out, I think it's detox of being busy, constantly having, every minute of the day calculated. It's screen time, 100%. I agree with that. And it's instant ability to entertain myself instantly. Like whatever, if I have a downtime, I can get on Instagram, I can get on YouTube, I can read something constant. When you're out there in nature, you go through a detox, and then it's almost like you take a veil off and you see the things around you, and you get entertained by the squirrel that's over there just working his ass off so that he has something to eat in February. And you get entertained by, whatever it is. Even if it's watching and observing whatever prey you're after. That's really interesting. I've always called it the 3-day effect. It's great that I'm not crazy, that is an actual thing. That's really cool.
It's an actual thing. I mean, you go onto Google Scholar right now and type in 3-day effect, and I'm sure a couple papers will come up. The person who coined it in the scientific literature is a guy from University of Utah, is where he does research out of. So yeah, it's a thing, man. It's a thing.
That's awesome. That's way cool. So, go from comfort crisis. You're a professor at University of Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Which, okay, I'll give you that. I'm a University of Wyoming, alum. Sorry.
Yep. Some
we were
battles
rebels
throughout the years.
sorry. We were rivals for a long time. But I do love going down to the Thomas and Mack every year. We go down to the NFR. My wife and I, we just love that rodeos. The way they put that show on is unbelievable. So I do like your Thomas and Mack Center.
Yeah, good. No, that's a good time when NFR is in town for sure.
It is. It changes Vegas. It really does. You put 250,000 rural people in that town, it'll change everybody's mood. Mood.
Yeah, it's hilarious because you walk into the casinos and you start to hear country, and you're like, I think NFR. Oh yeah, is NFR started? Oh yeah. It's December 10th. NFR's in town. That's why I think we got the country. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's pretty cool. So let's talk about the dehydration, since we kind of hit, the comfort crisis, the dehydration part, which fascinates me. And I know you dropped the second part of it yesterday, right? Wednesday. Mm-hmm. I haven't read the second part. I just been too busy, but I went down the road or the hole with your first one. It absolutely fascinates. And it dispelled a bunch of problems, things that I've been worried about for a long time. How did you start that? I mean, you just one day going, gosh, I'm thirsty. Wonder why.
Yeah, it's well, this particular one started because I live in Vegas is all like these little communities. And so you have like a community center with a gym. So I'm up at the gym, and a guy comes in, and he's an older guy, and he gets on I think he was on the elliptical, and got a bottle of water, and he dumped in some hydration packet, like he's getting ready. And then he used it for like 5 minutes and was like, okay, I'm done. I'm like, okay. Do we really need to like hydrate for that? Like, I don't even know if you sweat. And so, I think ultimately I'm a journalist. A lot of being a journalist is observing and then asking questions about it. Whereas, I think the normal person either they don't observe, or then they don't ask questions about the observation. I think my brain just gets dialed into that. So yeah, it sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole of hydration. And I was surprised, because ultimately what I do when I have a question like that is I just start reading research. I look at the scientific literature. I talk to scientists who study the topic, and also people who actually work with people in the field, because you'll find if you only talk to scientists who are in a lab, like life is in the lab. So It's good to talk to people who are actually practitioners as well. So yeah, I did my usual and went down the rabbit hole and put out this piece on my 2% newsletters, where I publish a lot of stuff in real time.
So 2%, it's 2%.com, right? Or it seemed like there was
it's 2PCT. So TWOPCT.com.
Yeah, and that's where I started down the rabbit hole. The interesting thing to me is all of the myths that we've been taught our entire life about hydration, and stuff that I found while hunting in the backcountry. and I do it a lot in the backcountry, but don't really think about why. Partially probably because I'm unplugged, and I've already gone through the detox, and I'm just going down the paces of surviving. But a lot of it got explained. So one of the interesting things that I've always fought with was coffee, because I'm a coffee drinker. I drink my Juniper Mountain coffee every morning like clockwork. I mean, I have a cup in the morning and a cup in the afternoon, and I always worried about that afternoon cup while hunting because I was worried it was dehydrating me and just causing more of a problem. Can you explain what you found there?
Yeah. So coffee, people argue it's a diuretic, which means that it speeds up. You get rid of more water, right? So the idea is that if you drink coffee, you're actually going to end up peeing out more water, and therefore you will end up dehydrated. So there's some truth and some nonfiction in that, or and fiction in that. And that is that, yes, coffee is a diuretic and that you might pee more, but the water in the coffee is going to be more than you end up releasing. So you end up with a net positive in hydration.
Yeah, because it's mostly water. And so you're not using that much water to flush the caffeine and all the other stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. So you might have just to put this in a practical sense, you might have an 8-ounce coffee and you release an extra 2 ounces of it, but you still end up with a net positive of 6 ounces. And I'm just making those numbers up, but yeah.
Right.
And that happens with a lot of things. And another thing is that people often don't factor in water from food. Food has water. So you're getting hydration often from food. Now, if you're in the backcountry and you're eating dehydrated meals, that's not going to happen. You're going to get the water that you add into the meal. But fresh food, I mean, if you think of the extreme case of something like lettuce, I mean, lettuce it's like a glass of water bound in some green stuff, more or less. It's like 95% water.
It's right? Edible water.
Yeah,
chewable
exactly.
Water.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the other interesting things that I found is, you see statistics like the average person, 75% of people are walking around dehydrated. And it turns out that's probably not the case. So these scientists, they basically looked at the data and they said, oh, okay, well, it looks like certain populations do become dehydrated relatively frequently. They tend to be the elderly because they're not as mobile. They tend to be really extreme athletes, so endurance athletes. They tend to be people with certain medical conditions, diabetics. But the average person with access to clean water is usually hydrated enough.
And potentially overhydrated because we're all scared of being dehydrated.
Yeah, so we just pound water all day. Yeah.
And we go to the doctor, and every time there's something wrong with us, they're like, it's because you're dehydrated. So I go pound another gallon of water, like my fourth one the day.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the sort of lesson, and the other thing that I think is important, especially for this audience, is that in the backcountry, yes, your chances of dehydration will increase because you're moving, even if you're not sweating and it's cold and you're breathing, notice how your breath makes fog. Well, you're releasing water as you breathe. So I do think keeping up with water in the context of a hunt is really important. But the idea that, you're walking around day to day and it just is dehydrated, like you're almost a skeleton at this point, right? Like, no, that's probably not true. Well,
I love you had one statement in that the first part. It's how you tell if your pee's the color of straw and you're not thirsty, you're hydrated, you're fine. So Pay attention to that, because I've been on backcountry hunts where it comes out looking like orange juice. You're like, ooh, I don't think that's good. I didn't eat a ton of protein last night. I probably ought to start sipping water. That was the other thing. So tell me about that. You can chug water and it won't do you any good, right?
You're better off sipping early and often rather than trying to catch it all up with, just pounding a gallon at once. I mean, it's not like the gallon is going to hurt you, but you'd be better off sipping as you go. And starting, one of the big things, and this is from one of the guys in there, Mike Russell, who's a really brilliant sports nutritionist. He found some data that said 50, and this is college athletes, so different than hunters, although I would imagine there's some carryover. 50% of college athletes start events underhydrated. So step one is like drink enough water before you get out there, whether you're a college athlete or whether you're a hunter. Like on the way up to the trailhead, you should be making sure that you start the trailhead with enough water on board. Because if you're starting out on the trail and you're kind of peeing darker yellow at that point, like now you're going to have to catch up with filtered water, and who the hell knows where that's going to be, or you're going to have to carry it in. And by the way, now you've just worked harder to carry this water that you're then going to have to replace.
Yeah, so you have a net loss. You have a net loss all the way around. So start hydrated, carry water in to get you to wherever you need to be, so that when you start drinking filtered water, or you don't have to drink as much to keep hydrated. That's great advice. Really, really solid advice. So tell me a little bit about, I know you have a book coming out. It's September 26th, correct?
Yeah, you got it.
So I ordered mine online. I hope you sign it. I'm sure all that's all done yet already, but tell us a little bit about Scarcity Brain. What does that really mean? That's I've tried to do a bunch of research. What is this about? And there's a couple things I want to ask you about, but you might touch on them.
So it looks at why can't humans seem to get enough from food, stuff, information, status, all these things, right? We are like a creature that craves more. We consume, we acquire. And so why is that? It looks at that question. So a lot of it goes back to how we evolved. You think about humans, we evolved in environments where food, stuff, information, number of people we could influence, these were all very scarce, right? So we developed this sort of drive to overdo those things when we have the opportunity. If I find food, I am going to overeat, full stop, because I don't know where my next meal is coming from. I'm going to try and always get more power so I can rise up and survive, right? If I can get information, that's going to give me a survival advantage, because the future is like, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, right? So we evolved to crave all those things, but now we live in this world where we have an abundance of all those things. I mean, think of grocery stores filled with 50,000 different items, right? 24/7 news cycle on Twitter. Like a great stat is a person born 700 years ago, we see more information in one day than that person did in their entire life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's insane.
And that's absolutely changed us. Think about our relationship with what we own. The average person has at least 10,000 items in their home now. Even 150 years ago, people had like 2 outfits and like a Bible and maybe a couple tools, a roof over their head, some cooking tools. That was it. Right. And now we live in this world where you can constantly consume more of these things. So it looks at how that's changed us, what that's doing to us, and what you can do about it, basically.
So one of the interesting things that I read that's in this book is you talk about this I picture, and I'm sure this isn't what it is, but I picture this laboratory of these scientists figuring out how casinos work and how to keep you fed or keep you sitting at a slot machine and maximizing your cash outlay, I guess would probably be the best way to put it. So this exists. You know this.
Yep.
What does that mean? How does that work? How does that work on the human psyche?
Yeah. So this is an actual lab in Las Vegas that I visited, and to sort of give you some context and run up for why this is important and why this goes beyond just casinos is, so about up to 1980, slot machines weren't popular at all. There's a few of them in casinos. No one played them. In 1980, this guy comes along. His name's Syred. He had noticed that his grandkids would play Atari for hours on end, like hours. And he's going like, how is this holding their attention? They don't even get anything tangible when they win this. This is stupid.
Yeah.
But it gives him an idea. He's like, I wonder if we could apply some of the same technology to slot machines. So what he does is he basically digitizes the slot machine. They used to be like an actual analog machine. He digitizes them. What he does is he gives them screens. He also allows you to bet on all sorts of different rows and lines within the game. Right. So it's not just the one down the middle anymore. That you can bet on 50 different combinations of lines. And he also speeds up the play. So what this does is it makes it so slot machines become this enthralling thing because you know you're going to win at some point. You don't know how much you're going to win. And you can quickly play again and again and again to find out if you win. So this falls into this 3-part system that I call the scarcity loop. If you want to get a human hooked on something, the system has to have these 3 parts. 1, it has to have opportunity. So you're given an opportunity to get something of value. This could be money. This could be food. This could be a partner.
A chance to win. Chance to play again.
Chance to play again. 2, it's got to have unpredictable rewards. So it can't be a sure thing, right? You might get it sometimes. You might not get it others. You might get it in different degrees. And then 3 is quick repeatability. You have to be able to repeat the cycle over and over again. So you think of a slot machine, I can win money. I'm going to play this game. Reels are spinning. I might win nothing. I might win $1. I might win $100,000. Oh, I didn't win anything. Bam, play again. Repeat, repeat, repeat. So that not only captivates humans, it captivates all animals. Like
really?
I've talked to researchers who will set up gambling games with pigeons. Pigeons will literally sit and play that game over and over and over, knowing it's going to get them less food than a sure thing game. Random rewards obsess all animals. Rats will do the same thing. They'll just hit and play the random reward game, even knowing they could get more food if they played a predictable game. So once this guy puts this system into slot machines basically 10x, like immediately. They went from having like no room on the casino floors to now taking up 85% of the casino floors and driving the vast majority of casino profits.
Now, so I'm not crazy. Well, every time I walk into a casino, it seems like the tables get smaller and the slot machines get bigger.
Yeah. Slot machines make way more money because people get way more captivated by them. And a lot of it has to do with speed. So if you're playing, let's say you're playing blackjack, you might be able to play 50 games in an hour. If you're on a slot machine, you could potentially play 500 games in an hour. Just
oh my gosh.
Do. Now the same system is what makes social media work. Think about it. I have an opportunity to increase my status. I'm going to post. What's going to happen? Am I going to get a lot of likes? Am I going to get no likes? Am I going to get a comment? Is the comment going to be a positive comment or is it going to be a negative comment? What's it going to be? What's it going to be? And then quick repeatability, I can refresh and refresh and refresh and watch those things come in. Think about the dating app Tinder. I have an opportunity to get a mate. Swipe, swipe, swipe. I don't know when I'm going to match. No idea. Also, I don't know how good the match is going to be. Is it going to be kind of an ugly girl or is it going to be like the hottest girl I've ever seen in my life? And then eventually, bam, there it is. Oh my God, that was fantastic. And I can keep swiping.
So in this loop, is it very close to addiction where you're always chasing that first dump of dopamine? Is the first time you win or the first time you get likes on social media, is that what you're constantly chasing?
Battlefield to backcountry. In these times of uncertainty, it is important to find communities that share your value and interest. Cryptic has built a reputation for excellence in outdoor gear, providing effective camouflage patterns for all kinds of activities, everything from hunting to tactical operations. Their commitment to quality and epic design is evident in their range of apparel and gear, making Cryptic the perfect choice for any outdoor adventure. Don't miss out on gearing up for the upcoming hunting season with Cryptic today.
Yeah, you're chasing the biggest upsides. And there's interesting studies on gambling addicts, especially slot machine addicts. They have a higher likelihood of having had a jackpot early on into their gaming career. So you're chasing that. What's it going to be? So think about it this way. If a slot machine paid the same amount every time, it sounds like it'd be pretty nice, right? No, it wouldn't be. It would be called the job. Yeah, that's what a job is. You repeat a behavior and you get a predictable amount of return on the behavior, right? Slot machines are thrilling because you don't know. It's the don't know that's really important. So the don't know is in social, it's in dating apps, it's in a lot of finance apps, like if you're familiar with Robinhood. So they've taken a lot of the mechanics of slot machines and put them in, especially the speeding it up part, where you can make multiple trades and there's not any fees around the trade. And that was just to speed it all up.
Really? So is it at the end? I hope there's at the end of this, that at the end of Scarcity Brain, you boil this down so that us readers will be able to recognize that and avoid it if we can.
Yeah, I do. And I'll tell you the other thing is that this same system can be used for good. So before I tell you how, I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so then the question is, well, why do humans get captivated by this in the first place? It evolved from hunting and gathering. So if you think about, let's say that we're hunting. This is a hunting podcast. It's a million years ago, right? You and I are like, okay, we need some food. We don't know where the food is. We don't know how much we're going to get. So we go to one place. Nothing there. We go to the next place. Nothing there. We go to the next place. Oh my God, that elk is giant. Bingo, jackpot. And then we have to repeat that cycle every single day. And there can also, in slot machines, like you can sometimes win a little bit, sometimes you win a lot. Same deal with hunting and gathering. Right. You might see a bush and you get to it and you're like, oh, it's one bush. The berries are dead. But you might see a bush and be like, oh, there's one bush and it's huge and it's on the periphery of an entire grove of bushes and they all have berries. It's like the biggest win in life, right?
Yeah, right.
So that is why scientists think that we sort of evolved to just fixate on this system. It came from hunting and gathering, which means you can use it for things that are good. You can still hunt today. Hunting is a random rewards game.
That's right.
You're making these decisions. You don't know where the animal is going to be. You can make some predictions, but you ultimately don't know. And like, think about how excited you get when you're glassing all day. Then, oh my God, that thing is huge. What we got to get. I mean, it's like the most exciting thing ever, right?
So we can use it in this. So this kind of rolls back to the comfort crisis. We're using that game every single day, and the reward is when we outsmart or stumble into, or whatever you want to call it, success. But it's not just the success. It was the build up to the success. It was the going into this area and not finding one, and this area not finding one, and then finding one.
Exactly.
Whereas if it was found one every time, it becomes what we do every day. It's rinse and repeat.
Yeah. It's you need to have, basically humans get a greater reward from things that they had to work harder for. And that was probably a survival thing too, that sort of embedded in our brain, for lack of a better way of putting it. Yeah. But if you just wanted the meat, you'd go to the grocery store.
Right.
Right. And so putting in more work, and I'm sure that, people listening to this have had hunts where they're really prepped and like, it just happens really quick, very early on. And it's like, well, I'm glad I did that, but also like, that's kind of easy,
Yep.
You're like, and not sure if it was awesome.
And I've also had the hunts that absolutely kick my ass. And on the way out, I'm like, this is fun, right? Why do we do this again? I can't remember why we do this again. And then 12 hours later, I'm already planning to do it again, even if it was unsuccessful, or if it was successful, it was just a hard hunt.
Exactly.
That is really interesting. So the good is being able to use it for, to stretch your brain that way, which is probably healthy because we're built that way, right. and avoiding the stuff that is toxic, doing it toxically.
Yeah. It's sort of like, how are you using, is how you play the game helping you? When you're hunting, you're outside, you're getting exercise, you're oftentimes with friends, or you're doing all these things that are very healthy for you. The same exact basic structure of the game can be found on social media, but you're probably sitting at home on the couch, swiping for this stuff that you're never going to remember, that's not doing much for you, right? So if you can find ways to leverage that behavior loop in a way that's good for you, that's like the ultimate. I mean, that's what people get really passionate about. You just want it to be applied to something that's good for you.
So one of the things I really appreciate about you, Michael, is that you're, a lot of authors, I would say the majority of authors write books that about things that they're really knowledgeable about, like I'm an expert in XYZ. What I appreciate about you is you're an investigative reporter. You go write things that interest you and find the experts that tell you the answers to answer that question. I really that just outside looking in makes me think this is your way of scratching that, because you're constantly looking for that answer. You're like, okay, I didn't get the answer here, or that's an interesting thing. It bring up another question. So you're scratching that with your journalism. That's really, really interesting.
Oh yeah. You totally, you nailed it. I mean, for me, it's if I'm writing a piece, like if I'm writing, say it's the hydration piece or what, I'm sitting in my office at 5 a.m. because I write really early. Well, I wonder what the deal is with that, because that doesn't quite add up. Right. What does that mean? So then I'm like, okay, let me go down the rabbit hole on Google Scholar, and I'm reading this study, and it's like, this just doesn't make sense. And then bam, you read the one study, and you're like, oh, that's it. That explains it. And it's like, that's the high of it, right? That's like when you guys see the giant elk walk out into the clear. I'm like, oh my God, that's it.
Yep. We found it. We found Shangri-La. There it is.
Yes, exactly.
That is phenomenal. So where can people get the book? I know I bought mine on one of the websites you suggested, so that I think it would sort of get signed. But where's the best place to get your book? Can you get them at 2%?
Yeah, you can get them at 2%. There's a store link. There's a bookshop in Las Vegas called Writer's Block that sells them online if you want a signature. And if you just go to 2pct.com, there's a post, should be one of the last 3 or 4, that has different links to get them. And we have a pre-order campaign too that's kind of cool. If you order 3, there's a program. It's like a workout program that's probably good for hunters in there too. So that I
was going to ask you about that. So walk me through that. I'm really close to buying 3 just so that I could get access. But what is that program, and where did it come from? I know you're a fitness fanatic. So where did that come from? Because let's talk. I want to talk hit on rucking.
Yeah, it's so the program is I call it super medium, and super medium is sort of the body type that you want, especially for hunting, especially for outdoor pursuits. So you don't want to be too big, because now you got to carry yourself in, and that sucks. So you don't want to be a bodybuilder. You also don't want to be the really lanky runner, because you do have to carry stuff in. So you need some sort of muscle. So you want to be built somewhere in between those two. So we call it super medium. And that name comes from one of my best friends is a SF guy. And he's like, yeah, we call our body type super medium. I'm like, oh, okay. That makes sense. We'll call it super medium.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you really want a lot, especially for hunting. You want to be sort of good at everything. You want solid endurance, but you also need to be strong enough, because you're going to be you're going to be packing in gear. You're going to be hopefully packing out a insanely heavy pack full of meat. You also need to be pretty resilient to injury. So you can't be rolling ankles, you can't be blowing out knees. So you got to really do a lot of durability work. So it hits all those sort of core components that you would want for something like that. And to your question, rucking is a part of it. So in the Comfort Crisis, I read about rucking, how humans are really interesting because we're the only species that can carry weight by our own volition for distance. So no other animal can just pick up a weight and be like, yeah, I think I'm going to carry this 10 miles.
Yeah.
So we can strap other animals down like donkeys, but they can't do it themselves. And so this really shaped us. Other animals can't do that. So I argue in the book that is our sort of killer physical app.
It's our super natural ability, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, totally. You compare us to other animals. We're not fast at all.
No,
we're terrible at jumping. We're terrible at climbing. We're good at covering ground while carrying stuff. That's what we're really good at. But that's something that a lot of people don't. I would argue that hunters probably do it as much as anyone, but the average person does not, carry weight for distance as a form of fitness, right? And it's mainly tends to be the groups that have put it at scale tend to be the Army, military. Like rucking is the foundation of military fitness. and hunters do it too.
Yeah.
And it's exceedingly good for us because you're getting a cardio benefit as you get a strength benefit. Tends to preferentially burn fat over muscle. Really good for strengthening your bones. Like it's like if you had to choose one exercise, I would probably choose that if I had to, desert island exercise.
So, yes, I mean, that's one thing. I never thought of this, but that's what we do every day. I strap a 70-pound, 60-pound, most now that I'm getting older, but 60-pound sandbag on my early stock mainframe and walk 2 miles. And I by the time I'm done with that, it's like I worked out for an hour and ran for an hour is how I feel. And, obviously I don't expend as much calories, or at least, my watch says I didn't, but I feel like I did. Absolutely.
Yeah, the watches aren't good at capturing calorie burn from rucking. It's going to be more in actuality than your watch says. The other thing that I love about, and I kind of said this, but you tend to preserve muscle and burn fat when you ruck because you do have the load. So it's almost like your body goes, oh, well, I better keep this muscle around. We better use this fat. And there's interesting studies on backcountry hunters in Alaska who are obviously doing tons of rucking around the mountains, and they'll test them before and after. I think it was a 10-day hunt, and they had lost weight, as you would expect, and it was all in fat. They had actually gained like a fraction of a % of muscle, which shouldn't happen. If you had people running, they'd lose a lot of muscle. They'd lose a lot of fat. The fat loss the weight loss would come from both sources.
So that's interesting. You bring up that study, and I think it's probably the same study. There's a couple of doctors out of University of Fairbanks that did a similar very study. That one of my guys went on a 10-day float drag hunt in Alaska, and he and his buddy were two of the participants.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he goes, it was amazing. He went into it in his, best fighting shape at 205, came out at like 182 and added a significant amount of muscle mass, but it was all fat. And there was some really interesting things that happened to him. Like he permanently damaged his fingernails. And it's not like he did something to him. It was they think it was a nutritional thing because they weren't eating like they should, because they struggled. It took them like 4 days to kill a caribou and that kind of thing. But it was a really interesting study. When they came out with findings, I was shocked, absolutely shocked on how it's not like an ultra marathon runner would end up, or if you were in a survival mode. I mean, it was really interesting. That's funny you bring that up.
Yeah.
So rucking is a huge thing for hunters. What is some of the things that you noticed on your 30 days with Donnie Vinson that you would do again, or you would do differently, that some of our guys that are going to the backcountry should know? I mean, because you're the guy that asks questions and then answers them, because I assume you asked a bunch of questions to yourself out there. Number one, why am I doing this? Number two, a bunch of other questions, and then came back and answered them.
Yeah, what I would do differently is kind of to what we were just talking about. I went in, I trained pretty hard for it, and I just went in too lean. Like I was just, I looked like a cage fighter when I went in, and I should have just put on 10 pounds in fat right before I left, just spent like 2 weeks, like, okay, I'm just going to eat like a crazy person. It's like all fast food the next 2 weeks. Because I lost a lot of weight, and it was, at a certain point, it becomes the sort of rate limiting step in pack outs and just your overall, how you feel. So I think I would have gone in heavier. I think I went in at so I'm 6'1". I went in at 170. I probably should have gone in at 180 at least, maybe 185. And so when I walked out of there, I was 160. So that's pretty skinny for me. Yeah, I'm 180 right now, just normally. Yeah, so I would do that differently. I mean, I wouldn't train any differently. I would just have eaten a lot more, I think. You don't want to go in like a cage fight. You want to go in like the heavyweight where you're like, this guy's a fighter. And then you see him fight and you're like, oh, wow, he just smashed that guy's face in, So I think I'd be more like that. What I would do again that I enjoyed is I had my, the cell phone up there was obviously useless. I only used it occasionally for photos only, but I took a notebook. I mean, because I'm a journalist, which I would do that normally, but I think that that could be useful for the average person too. I might have one right here. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I use these right in the rain.
Yep.
I use the orange because you can see it in case you set it down on the ground and walk away, as I tend to do. Yeah. I had a bunch of these right in the rains with, Fisher Space Pen, and just took note. I mean, I'm a journalist, so I'm taking notes on everything, but I do think that that'd be an interesting practice for the average person too. Just thoughts that come to your mind, especially if you're out there for a while, you're going to start thinking of some things you wouldn't in everyday life for sure.
Yeah, we, because we film all of our hunts, so we have the ability to do video logs, but it's the same thing, and it's fun to come back. And I tend to do some that I Easter egg some things in there for my editing crew because it's a game we play, but it's fun to watch, when I get home and a couple months later go through them and you watch the progression of your mindset as it changes. And you get to watch yourself grow, and it then reminds you, oh yeah, I need to do that. You're right. That is important to me because it was important to me out there enough that I thought about it. I need to go do this, Yeah, I haven't talked to that buddy forever, whatever. That's really interesting. And if nothing else, it's something that you can bring back from an adventure that is a legacy to your offspring or to your wife. They can clip through it and kind of feel what you were talking about or what you were thinking and what you were doing out there. I mean, thank God Lewis and Clark did it, or we'd have no idea what happened on that epic adventure. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's a good practice. I mean, as I was talking about when we were talking about the 3-day effect, I mean, your mind literally starts to work differently in a way. So if you can capture some of that, I think it can be beneficial or at least insightful.
Yeah, that's really cool. So nothing planned this year because you have the book coming out.
Yeah, I might tag along with a buddy who has a tag in the LaSalle Mountains in Utah. Okay. So we'll see. I think that's Labor Day weekend, so I might hang out with him for a few days, but beyond that, no.
Oh man. Yeah. So you're married?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have kids yet?
No kids. Nope.
No kids.
Yeah.
So there's a couple questions I ask almost everybody, and we've hit two of them. Number one, what are you really good at? And I think we talked about that. You're really good at asking questions and answering them. Number two is why you hunt, which we opened this thing with. Hey, why did you hunt as a newbie, and are you going to hunt again? What is something that guys can be thinking about, the big picture, something that you, through all your travels and all your writing, you spent, I think it was 40,000 miles writing this book, which is amazing to me. You went to Iraq and hung out with some psychiatrists that are dealing with addiction, which I can't wait to read that. Just because we all have addictions, even if we don't recognize them. There's addictions to everything, and I think Facebook is the number one addiction in the world right now. But personal opinion. Anyway, so I'm excited to read that. But what is some of the things that you on your travels, or one of the things that your travels that guys should be thinking about or doing more research into?
Let me think of how I want to answer that. Well, we covered the scarcity loop. I think that once you understand the mechanics of that, you understand why we spend so much time on media today. So the average person spends between 11 and 13 hours a day engaged with digital media. And
it's actually sickening.
All that stuff it's 100 years old at most, right? Radio was invented in like the 20s.
Right.
And so we went from having none of that in our lives for all of time, for 2.5 million years. And it's only within the last 100 years that this stuff has become our lives. And so I just want people to, I'm not saying that that's, bad, but I do want people to think about why they use it. And I think a lot of it's under the surface that we just kind of default to it, right? Because it captures our attention with that loop I was telling you about. And because it's easier. And there's this, the father of American psychiatry, his name is William James. He has this great quote that I love. And he says, at the end of your life is basically a culmination of what you paid attention to. Now apply that to 11 hours of
social
digital media. And if you're spending a lot of time on Facebook, like, are we going to look back on our deathbed and be like, man, I really wish I would have, hung out in the comment section on that crazy Facebook page more. That's really what would have made my life have purpose. Like no one's saying that, right?
No.
But we just kind of default to that because it's easy and because there's this game, it's all gamified. So I think understanding the mechanics of that are important. I'll try and think. So I have a chapter where I traveled into Bolivia. There's this tribe in the Bolivian jungle called the Chamane tribe. And sorry, I'm getting text here. They have the healthiest hearts ever recorded by science, ever.
Healthiest hearts.
Yeah. And so this becomes important because what kills people?
Heart disease, like the number one killer. Yeah.
Oh, by far, dude. Like everyone listening to this podcast right now probably has some markers of heart disease right now.
100%.
These people don't get heart disease. So I fly to, it's like one of those things where you have to take 4 freaking flights. I fly to La Paz, drive 12 hours down to this town that's like the jumping off point into the Bolivian Amazon. And then I take a canoe like 6 hours upriver. And, your canoe captain, I guess you call him. Everything looks the same. It's just 6 hours of it's this
trees and water.
Trees and water and river. And then he just kind of pulls over and you're like, how do you know we're here? And he just
this bin looks the same as the last 200 of them.
Yes. And
I've been to Brazil's Amazon peacock bass fishing, and the same thing. He pulls over and you go, how do you know we're here? You don't have a GPS. Are you counting your strokes or?
Yeah, it's all the same, dude. It's so crazy. But these people are there, and it's just like, it's a village. There's not electricity. There's not any of that. But they've managed to not get this killer that kills us. Like at an insane rate. Someone dies of heart disease every 34 seconds in America.
Oh my gosh.
And when you look at what people are worried about, it's cancer. It's like someone's going to break into my house and shoot me. It's all these things, which I'm not saying you shouldn't be worried about those things. But I am saying no one worries about heart disease.
Not like they should.
No, you look at Google search terms and no one Googles it. The media doesn't cover it. That is the thing that's going to kill you.
Wow.
It's like we're worried about the mole that the mole on our finger might be cancerous when we're playing Russian roulette. It's like, don't worry about that. Worry about the gun. And what seems to be the reason they don't get heart disease is because they eat mostly unprocessed food. So they're not eating all the junk food that we are. And so I think the takeaway for the average person is it really solidified to me that I'm not saying you should never eat junk food because I don't want to live in a world where I can't eat freaking peanut M&Ms.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think we should really be thinking about, and hunters have the ace up their sleeve with all that meat in the freezer, pairing that with other unprocessed foods. And I think that you're probably going to be better off in the long haul.
You're less likely to die from heart disease. And I've talked to enough people that have done research on if that's the reason what cancer is starting to be a big problem, or if that's a reason that we have dementia and Alzheimer's, and it all stems back to what you eat. I have a friend, his name's Glenn Eberly, and this is no lie. He got diagnosed with cancer. I went on a hunt with him in October, and we went on a mule deer hunt, and he kept complaining about his back. He's like, I think I slipped a disc. And he did this epic adventure in Alaska where he took a doll sheep, and just unbelievable. Came back. We went on this hunt. And I was like, you got to get that checked out, Glenn. You're too young to be hobbling around, not being able to sit in a pickup for 3 hours. And went home. He went home, got it checked out. Come to find out it's cancer. And it was prostate cancer how it started, but it went all over inside of him. And
geez.
basically, yeah, I mean, he went down the road, was like, okay, gone oncologist, and we're going to do chemo treatments. And he went halfway through, or the most of the way through the chemo treatment, almost killed him. Just, I watched him deteriorate extremely fast. And I had him on the podcast here not too long ago. He's the owner of a company called Eberly Stock Backpacks.
Yeah, I think
he was an Olympic. What's that?
I think I might have met him at SHOT Show.
You could have.
Yeah, because they didn't they do a film debut about the hunt he did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was called Full Measure. Yeah,
absolutely. I remember that. Yeah, so I know Caleb who guided him on that.
Okay.
Hunt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I think I met him briefly. That's terrible.
Yeah.
To hear that about him.
So get this. So he goes almost all the way through the cancer treatment with chemo and all that stuff, and says, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Does a bunch of research, goes to Scottsdale to this facility where they basically tear his body down, and they control all the food intake. They purge all the junk that he's been eating over the last 60 years. They put him in a heat chamber, and then put him, in a ice bath for so long, and then put him on a treadmill with oxygen for so long. And they do this, and I think it was 3 weeks, or might have been 6 weeks. Yeah, I think it was 6 weeks. He came out of it after 6 weeks, cancer free, 100% cancer free, which he is a believer. And I mean, he's proof of it. He's a believer that all that junk in his body was just feeding the cancer, and it was just allowing it to exist. And once he purged all that, he came out the other side cancer free. Now, he said the same thing. He goes, no, don't get me wrong. I'll have a beer here and there because I don't want to live. I'm still trying to live. I don't want to live in a box or in a a white room. He said, but I watch what I eat now. I watch how I exercise. I watch what I do. And he's hoping to keep it, that way forever. Yeah. People didn't know that when we were watching that Full Measure that he had cancer. In fact, the day he did that, he told me. I was, and he and I have been friends for the better part of 20 years. And it shocked me, but it is 100% what you're saying is the stuff that's garbage in, garbage out, basically.
Yeah. And that tribe doesn't seem to get a lot of the cancers we do. They just age a lot slower. They have a lot, they experience less brain shrinkage as they age. Now, of course, they eventually die. What tends to kill them is the diseases that we've eradicated, pneumonia, random infections. They get in accidents, like my guide into the jungle. I asked him, what kills people? And he just goes, a lot of times people get, Bushmaster. And it's a snake. And I'm like, oh, so people actually die from that. He's like, oh yeah, my uncle died. Like you can't, if you get bit, like the canoe is a 6 hour ride, and you get to the hospital, like you're done. It's like, whoa. So we're lucky that we don't often die of pneumonia or random infections, and are outside in our backyard and some random snake bites us, and it's like, well, that's the end. It was nice to know you, everyone. I'm gonna go take a walk now. We go to the hospital, so if we can start to fix a lot of the stuff that does kill us, which is a lot of it is preventable with better diet, moving enough, we can live a lot longer, and I'd argue a lot better too.
Yes, 100% agree. Because without pains and aches and all the other things, life becomes a lot more fun.
Yeah, exactly. You can get, if you, for your audience, you can see that elk where you're like, oh my God, that thing is a monster, but it's a ways away, and be like, yeah, we got this. Instead of worrying you're not going to be able to pack it out, or you're not going to get to it in time, and all the other things. You don't want your fitness to be the limiting step in having a killer hunt.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you don't have to run a 100-mile marathon to be that fit. You 3 or 4 mile ruck with 60, 70 pounds on your back is way more healthy for what we're doing as far as a lifestyle.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can totally be fit enough even 3 hours a week, I think a person could be adequate for the mountains,
Yep. That's awesome. Well, I so much appreciate the conversation, Michael. It's been awesome, very knowledgeable. Check out the Comfort Crisis, check out the 2%.com, 2pct.com. Find you on Facebook, Instagram. your Instagram page makes me laugh because it's just a bunch of photos of I think they're Twitter, aren't they? Twitter snap. So you have to zoom in to read them. I was like, I'm just gonna follow him on Twitter. This will be a lot easier.
There you go. Yeah. I carry over a lot of that. I'm like, I'm more a words guy than a pictures guy. So here you go, everyone.
But yeah, check him out. And is there anything else that you know, where else can we find you? What else should we be looking for?
Yeah, those are good things. The new book comes out September 26th, and yeah, I'm all over the web. Just search my name. I wish I was less on the web, but I love doing the writing stuff. So yeah, it's fun. I have a good time.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I hope to catch up with you. If you're at SHOT this year, you know, look me up and we'll go have a beer and hang out with Glenn. It's always a good time. He's got great stories. So
yeah, let's make it happen, man. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate it, Michael. Enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully at some point it cools down to your wonderful Vegas winters.
Yeah, our 80-degree winters.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.